All right, so the next connector I'd like to talk about is what I like to call a rigid connector, also by Heinz Strobel. Most of the time when I'm using connectors, I like the basic connector because like I said, it's somewhat flexible and that it adapts itself. It'll expand or shrink to the angle that I need, whether I'm doing an icosahedron or a truncated icosahedron, that it adapts. But what I found is that as I started to do much larger shapes, that the weight of the shape would cause things to start to sag and collapse. So I found the need for connectors that were more rigid in certain spots. So this one is again designed by a man named Heinz Strobel. But what it's meant to do is instead of having an open, flexible, hinge like connector, that this connector will keep things at exactly a 60-degree angle. It won't be any more, any less, and it just stays rigid. And what I find is it adds some structure to larger shapes because right now has a very spongy feel to it. It can bend and it can flex, but if you've got a project that's pretty large and weight and sag is a concern, then having some of these rigid connectors in place are helpful. And essentially, what it is instead of our standard 4 unit connector, it's another triangle. Notice I've got two triangles here that I'm joining together. And so if I zoom in, I can show you the details. What Heinz did was he took another piece for a triangle, which I like to use 4.5 units. Slightly larger than your typical 4 unit. Any of my triangles, I use 4.5. It's the maximum amount of units I need, but it minimizes the need for how much paper I use. So what you do is essentially we're going to string on these two triangles onto this green one. If I do a kind of side profile like this, so these are going to slip on here. And so what you do is basically I'm going to thread it through one, like so, and I'm going to thread on the second one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange it so that this little extra 1/2 unit tab, which I like to use, stays on the outside. So like I said, it was originally 4.5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, and about a half. This half does not have to be perfect. But then what I'll do is I'll arrange it in such a way that this 1/2 unit, so notice where I've got the pieces here. This 1/2 unit will end up in a certain spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this up. This full unit is going to go inside the triangle here, like so. And then this 1/2 unit is going to end up here. And this is strictly for the purposes of kind of hiding it a little bit. Okay, so what I've got here, once again, is here's what it looks like if I take it apart. Okay, my two triangles here, 2 units sticking out on this side, 1/2 unit sticking out on this side. And as I close it up, I'm trying to get this end inside here, inside this triangle. And then this little half tab folds over. Okay, and what you get is something that just stays at a rigid 60-degree angle because you're creating an equilateral triangle here. Now, to finish it off, though, to really lock it in place, what you then do is you get a piece that's about 2.5 units long. So notice this one, 1, 2, and about a 1/2 unit more. Well, what we do here is we use this kind of as a cap to wrap around this piece to keep this flap from popping open and springing out. So what you do here is this is where we take advantage of the fact that we are using cardstock, something that is flexible and bendable, is we'll take the full end and we'll put it underneath this one. And in fact, let me change something here real quick. I'm going to change this to a white one so that it shows up a little better on camera here. So here's my 2.5. One of the full sides I'm going to slip underneath my triangular connector, underneath the green one, like so. Okay, and then it's going to wrap around over the top. And then here's where it gets a little tricky. I have to take this one and I have to bend it and insert it underneath in here in this triangular opening right here. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to kind of bend the paper a bit and squish it in here. And it kind of locks itself in place because these are also 60-degree angles, so that flap of paper can't pop back out. And so this is what we get. Okay, it's not a flexible hinge anymore. These two triangles stay in place and they can't move that much. And so it creates a lot more structure and rigidity to a project that might need it. Again, the limitation though is you're specifically doing a 60-degree angle. You could cut your paper and fold it differently to get something other than a 60-degree angle, but I like to just stick to these units. Later down the road, I'll explore with other sizes. But this is what I like to call a rigid 60-degree connector because it keeps things from bending and flexing. And a lot of my projects that are much larger, maybe like I've got one project that's about like 2.5 feet tall, it lends a lot more structure to that shape. Now, once again, let me show that because on camera here it's sort of coming out, sort of isn't. Okay, one more time. Okay, I've got my 4.5 unit connector. I will slide on 2 triangles. Okay. And notice where I've positioned it. I've got them next to each other just before the little 1/2 unit piece. As I kind of wrap it up into basically a rigid triangular connector, this flap is going to tuck in right here. And so I'm going to kind of tuck and bend it in gently. So it looks like this from the side profile. This little 1/2 flap is going to fold over. Okay, and then I've got my locking piece, basically a 2.5 unit strip. A full unit is going to go right in here underneath the piece I just put in. And it's going to wrap around the top. And then this little 1/2 unit is going to go and complete the wrap. It's going to get gently kind of bent and pushed in here. And it's going to lock everything into place so it can't go anywhere. And there I've got my 60-degree rigid connector.